Thank you for joining us today,
Sure.
Sandy. So, Sandy, you are obviously an ex-Marine yourself,
Right.
and I wanted to ask you a little bit about the event you guys had today, joining with the St. Albans Senior Center. Can you tell me a little bit about what you were doing here today?
Sure. Well, we were reaching out to primarily thank them for the service that they've given the country and provided to all of us, and we're happy to be, the focus of a barbecue, which got them downstairs and into a social setting. But it was really a pleasure to be here and just see the number of residents there are here, many of whom were in World War II in Korea and are older. My father would have been 91. He was a World War II veteran, and so I can envision him staying in one of these facilities as well. So there's a real appreciation for the patients as well as the staff that cares for them.
Now, City and State just wrapped our veterans issue, which is out on newsstands this week. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your service in the Marines. What made you, as a young man, decide to enlist in the Marines as opposed to any of the other branches of military?
Well, as I said, my father was an Air Force pilot, and my eyes weren't good enough to be a pilot, and I ended up in ROTC, Naval ROTC, and decided to be a Marine. That was 1965 when I made that decision, just the beginning really of the full involvement in Vietnam. It was the issue of the day that most young men and some women had to face. But having grown up in a military family, I felt an obligation and a responsibility, and also a certain amount of admiration for what my father had done over many years, and so I was highly motivated.
And coming out of the armed services, you kind of took an unorthodox route into Major League Baseball.
Yes.
So I'm curious if anything that you learned in the armed services kind of prepared you for what you ended up doing with the Oakland Athletics and on through the New York Mets.
Well, after I got out of the military, I went to law school and practiced law for about 5 years, and then really coincidentally got involved with the Oakland A's. But I always felt that my military service gave me a little bit of credibility with people in baseball. I didn't have any baseball experience other than having played in high school and a little bit in college, so I wasn't a professional player. I hadn't been a coach or a scout. But having been in the Marine Corps gave me a certain amount of credibility with the athletes and the coaches. And so I didn't play off of that, but I think it contributed to my demeanor and my approach to things, and how I tried to handle and deal with people on a professional basis. So I think it had a big impact.
And you've obviously preached kind of a disciplined approach for not only the major league level, but also through the minor league system as well. You're talking about plate discipline and things of that sort. Is that maybe perhaps kind of an extension in a sense of some of the things that you learned in the military?
Well, one of the things I learned in the military is, and I try to apply this to organizational structure as well, and that is that you start with great people, and the Marine Corps had great people, and you start with great talent in baseball. But the way you leverage that talent, whether it's player talent or coaching talent, is to have a structure and an organization and a systematic approach to things. It doesn't mean that you're regimented. It doesn't mean that people can't use their imagination or be innovative, but you have to have a structure that allows people to express themselves and develop themselves to the maximum. And so what I found in the Marine Corps was, there was a lot of discipline, there was a lot of structure, but there was a lot of delegation also. There was a lot of opportunity for initiative and self-motivation. And so that's what we try to create with the Mets also. There's a framework and a system of goals and approaches, but within that framework we let people work it as they may.
Now, I'm curious, as a veteran yourself, and we are kind of the United States still has these kind of international conflicts that we're dealing with. Do you feel that veterans have the resources that they need to help them through whatever injuries they may have or other maladies when they come back to the country?
It's that's a hard question because for the most part, I am able to visit institutions of this sort. I also get most of my information from the media, and what it appears to me is that it's very uneven. that the resources that are available to certain veterans and with particular injuries or of a certain era may be very different than what's available to veterans with other maladies from a different area. So, whether it's hospitalization or other benefits, it seems to be a very uneven environment. One thing I will say is I do believe today, as opposed to say 30 years ago, there's a greater appreciation among the public for what our veterans have gone through. And from my standpoint, looking at what I did in the Vietnam era to what they're doing today, there's just no comparison. The number of deployments these men and women have gone on to Iraq and Afghanistan, it's just mind-boggling, the amount of time that they've had to spend overseas in harm's way, away from their families. We really owe a lot to them.
Now, if I could just shift gears to baseball for a quick second. We have a lot of baseball fans amongst our readership. You've kind of been renowned for the Moneyball approach, and this is something that you kind of pioneered with the Oakland Athletics and have taken along to the Mets now. I'm curious how you apply the principles to Moneyball to a big market like this. Mets fans are used to, free agent, a lot of money spent on free agents and building a team more that way as opposed to kind of a ground up approach as you've taken. So is that difficult? Is it a difficult shift when you go from a small market like this to a media market as intense as New York?
Well, it hasn't been a difficult shift. I certainly have experienced the differences. But most big market teams that are successful, they do two things. They have some money to spend, but they also do very well in player development. The teams that are able to sustain it over a period of time have to develop their own players and also have some money to spend. And in our case, we need to develop the prospects in order to be in a position to not only utilize them, but also to add dollars to the equation. So, and the tough part, frankly, is developing the prospects, because there are two currencies in baseball: dollars and players. And if you don't have the players, there's some deals you just can't make. If you don't have money, there's some deals you just can't make. The ideal is to have a little bit of both, and I think we're getting to the point where that's the case.
And last question, to use maybe a very poor military analogy, I think Mets fans are clamoring for reinforcements perhaps as the trade deadline is approaching. Is there anything hopeful you can say to them as these weeks roll by?
Well, first of all, I think that while our record doesn't necessarily demonstrate it, I think the team is very much headed in the right direction. We've got a lot of good young players on the team now who need to develop further at the major league level. You don't just arrive and perform. Aren't that many Matt Harveys around. Most players need to continue to develop at the major league level, and we're starting to see some of that. We've got some other good players at the minor league level. When the time is right, we'll add. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we're not giving away our own talent hastily in order to fill what may be just a temporary need.